We're going to begin with Ois Yud Gimel of the original BASI Legani, upon which this Maimer is based. Right? Every year the Rabbi said a Maimer based on the original BASI Legani of the Friedrich Rebbe that had 20 chapters. The first year tavshin Yud Aleph was based on the first Ois. Hence this year, tavshin Pei Gimel, we can do the cheshbon. What's the cycle? From 1950 to 2013, whatever cheshbon I'm going to use, 20 into that. The fourth cycle, trust you on that, the fourth cycle of the 13th Os. So which Maimorim? The year Tavshin Chav Gimel, 1963 and 1983, Tavshin Mem Gimel. So there's the Friedrich Rebbe quoted the Zohar that says that Ein Sof is the Maila Adin Sof, higher without end, Ulamata Mata Adin Tachlis, and descends in Tachlis means really without fathoming, or out end, or end goal. Tachlis is an objective, a purpose, an end goal. There's no end goal. There's no fathoming its depth. So he examined in the previous ois the first half of the statement, now the second half. That which says in Zohar that Ein Sof is descends Adin Tachlis, Koila Gila by Ispashtus, Shubchinas Ispashtus, Bchinas Ein Sof Ein Shir Ubli Gvul Mamish Ad Lamatamata. This refers to the revelation and expansion, as it were, of the Ein Sof without sheer, without limit, infinitely Mamish till the very depths. The Madrega Yesa Charoinis Vayesa Tachtoinis to the very last and lowest levels. This is what the statement means. The Ein Sof is descends downwards. Adin Tachlis Sheispashtus Ha'over B'chinas Ein Sof Obligvul Klal. That the divine revelation extends infinitely without limit at all. Ad Madrega Yisa Mata to the very lowest level. Just you notice the language of the style, the syntax of the figure. Rebbe's Maimer is not the same as the Rebbe. On the surface, it's much more repetitive back and forth. The Rebbe's Maimer much more written much more succinctly. At any rate, but the Rebbe's Medaik, as we'll see, I don't know what the Diyukimah, his Medaik is the Shainis, etc., and in the structure of the Maimer. Continues the Friedrich Rebbe, so the Oilamus ain't, we just finished saying that Ein Sof extends all the way down. Now, in contrast, down to up. What's up? So Oilamus Ein Sof the infinite worlds that precede the Tzimtzum, there's such an union of infinite worlds. And Oilam Atzilus, and even Oilam Atzilus, which is part of the structure of Ishtalshalos. So the Shom, that's not Mata. The Shom Meira Ein Sof Begilui. There the Ein Sof is revealed illuminates in a revealed way. What he's explaining now is the presentness of the Ein Sof everywhere, but it's not the same. Present everywhere, but not in terms of revelation. Because in the higher worlds, Ein Sof is Begilui. So it extends. Lamati goes on to say it's through tremendous tzimtzumim. So there, Hadihim Kelim Lo'ed Ein Sof. So they, the Ulamas Ein Sof and Atzilus, are Kelim for the Ein Sof. The Liyois, the Gamba Kelim, Mariyim Elikus Mamash. Even the Kelim of Atzilus, and certainly the Kelim on a very sublime level of the infinite worlds are all Elikus Mamash, which means to say in simple language that the Pe'ech HaGvul, that's what a Keli is. It's a contained expression of the Eibishter. So there in those worlds, it's not lost that this is God expressing himself in a contained way. It doesn't conceal him. Elikus Mamash. Eibishter reveals himself in infinite ways, and in Gvul Kavayochel. So there is Gvul, there's Oilamus Ein Sof, and there's Gvul in Atzilus. We're talking about defined descriptive spheres. But in Atzilus, Chochma, Bina, Das, etc., what is the definition of it? The Eibishter expressing himself in Chochma, Bina, Das, as opposed to post Atzilus, Bia, these very same spheres begin to assume value inherently. Chachma, Bina, Das, not that the Eibishter is revealing himself that way. to some degree, and like in increasing degrees, you go down, the very milas themselves become inherently milas, whereas beautiful revelations, whereas Lifnei Atzimtzum, and then even in Atzilus, the mila of Chachma, Bina, Das, and so on, is that's how the Eibush is revealing himself. That's what he means by that the Kelim themselves are lekus mamish. They don't conceal Hashem. In Pella cloud, is that kind of clear, yeah? In Pella cloud, the Ein Sof Merisha Begilah. So it's not a Pella at all that the Ein Sof is revealed there, the higher worlds, in a revealed way. And it's also not a Pella that they're able to receive. Now, exactly what the difference is, I don't know. I mean, the difference is simple, but it means obviously more than just. There's no Pella that's revealed, there's no Pella that they can receive. They're inseparable. Why? That's what it means. He's revealed there because they are kelim to receive. So what's v'chein? Maybe they will deal with that. I don't know. But that's already descent. In contrast to Atzilus, the kelim, the kelim of Atzilus, they are like the body in its relationship to the soul. What by that he means the body is completely bottled, and the body, more importantly, is alive with the soul. A body is alive. It's not a machine that's animated by energy. It's not a robot. It's alive. It's a complete fusion between body and soul. So the guf reveals the neshama. It is alive, so much so that it is alive. Mashek in biyah, where the same kelim, meaning to say the same svidus in biyah, the analogy would not be a body to a soul, a living entity, but rather in bechinas levushim, garments. And the garments, of course, are extraneous and separate from the body of the person. Something else. So otherness is what emerges in biyah. There's no otherness in atzilus. We say every Friday night, the kam levushim tekinas loin, you made many levushim, many garments. What's the garments? The koi al biyah, that refers to biyah. Beitzirasiyah. Shehein rak levushim levad hakelim de atzilus. They are levushim to the /kelim of Atzilus, meaning the mid-sudas of Atzilus. Sheheim, that Atzilus is b'chinatz gufa kanal. So Atzilus is like the soul and body, which is now mislabish behem in the levushim of biyah. Right? So they're levushim, they're garments, which means separate, which means gvul emerges as something other that not reveals the Eibishter, but eclipses it to greater and greater degree. Or like it says in Zohar, that Eima Ilah, which is Bina Batzilus, Mekanana rests, the Kursaya in the throne, or the Vidan, the throne, which is a reference to Bria. He just said that he's just restating what he just said, that the kelim of Atzilus, where they're like a levush, a body to the soul, to the iris. Now they dwell in the levushim of biyah, which is the throne, metaphorically, of biyah. As he goes on to say, they milohi bechinas bina datzilus. So the supernal mother, that's bina, Chachma's father, bina is mother. Chacham is the Nekuda, and Bina develops, that's father and mother. So, Emi lo b'chinas datzilus, ahari himekanuna b'kursaya oilam hakisei. Where does she dwell? In the kursaya, the divan, the throne, which is called oilam hakisei, the throne, the world of the throne. The throne is a place where one sits down. It's islapshus, it's hashpol, it's a descent. That's the idea of sitting, is one comes down. And that's oilam habriya, and that's the world of not the Shemasa and Gufa, but rather Guf and Levushim. That's the metaphor. Atzilus is soul and body, soul being the oil and the body being the kelim, Bria is the body now, the kelim of Atzilus, now invested in Levushim, that's Bia. We're clear? The geography. Shish, Shit, Svira, and Yitzira. So the 6 Sviras are primarily revealed in Yitzira. Bina, we just said, where Atzilus is investure. In Bia is that Bina resides primarily in Bria. What dominates Olam HaBria is Bina. What dominates Olam HaYitzir are the 6 Sviras, the greater descent. The Oifen really refers to the Efanim, or the wheels of the chariot. It's a reference to Malchus. Where is Malchus? What dominates? Where is Malchus predominantly expressed? BASI. This is not new to us, because you learned that the 4 Olamis are not simply the same Olam downgraded, but a whole different characteristic. So what dominates Atzilus is Chochmas, Bittul. What dominates, this is what we're hearing now. In other words, all of the Kelim of Atzilus are all dominated by the union of Chochma, complete Bittul and the fusion with the Likus. What dominates Bria is Bin, and what dominates Yitzira are the Midas, and what dominates Asiyah is Malchus. What he's saying here is the clear distinction between Atzilus and below Atzilus. Atzilus is part of the Olam is Ein Sof, so it's no Pella. This is what he's saying now, that the Ein Sof is revealed there. Continuing the description of Ishtalshalus and the contrast between the lower worlds and the higher. That's why it's now conclusion. Bia is called Mata, by the number 57, just above that. In summary, there are merely garments, and a garment again is something other, it's extraneous to the body. One doesn't need the garments per se, you need the garments to negotiate climate, weather, other people, etc. So it's all external. So they are just levushim le'ratzilis, because that's where otherness, bria, creation, something other than the Eibishter, now comes into being. Levushim, the bia oimer. So with respect to the levushim, the garments that characterize and define bia, he says in the Zohar, from the levushim of bia, there flies, literally there emerges souls for man. Shema neshamas, that's most neshamas, and neshamas of bia. And most neshamas therefore come from a danga called levushim, which means we naturally do not feel this bittul to the Eibishter. In the Reba neshamas, most of the neshamas, the bia, are all neshamas of bri yitzir asiyah. The neshama emerges as part of the created reality. The pnimius, it's a chelek lekami bal mamish, and the pnimius, it's all rooted in chachmat atzilus and even higher. But that's the pnimius. In terms of the conscious identity, in the words of the Zohar mentioned before, minayu porchen nishmasen nidnosha. So, as conscious identity, the neshama emerges with a sense of separation as part of creation. That's the majority of neshamas. Rak chad b'dara, b'deres harishonim. Chad b'dara is one in a generation, which is singular. In the earlier generations, therefore plural, hey neshamas datzilus. And he's kind of saying that in our generations it isn't, but this is not our purview. But he's saying that in former generations, only one. We know the Alter Rebbe was a neshama datzilus. That was the big chiddush. The Baal Shem Tov fought and strove mightily to be mamshech the neshama from the clutches of Klippa that wouldn't let it come, because knowing what he's going to bring about. They say Klippa means the shirish makar of it, not that the neshama was in Klippa. It's a famous story. I'll tell you one day. Baal Shem Tov, it's very graphic, but how the Baal Shem Tov rested, W-R-E-S-T-E-D, the neshama of the Alter Rebbe, tore it over all of the protests. Akoponim, that's one in a generation. the bia. Most of the neshamas are neshamas the bia. Ella, important caveat. Shebebia gufa. So we're part of creation on the one hand. That's where we emerge. It's part of creation. But in creation, gufa and neshamas same pnimium, neshamas are pnimium, which means that the pnimius, and therefore to be uncovered and never lost, is the shaykhis to the pnimius of likus, to the sheresh shemaka. And neshamas are pnimium. Malachim chitzonius of chitzonius. Malachim are the external level of bia, but oilamas and the actual world same chitzonius di chitzonius. Okay, we understand the language here, yeah. Without getting beprotius, that neshamas are the pnimius. Pnimius means the inner intent. Pnimius means invested there or expressed there or present there is the inner intent, the inner truth. So inner truth is the neshama is a part of Atzmus. So that remains forever present in the neshama, notwithstanding the fact that it emerges as an identity to be called a neshama in Biyah. Whereas the malachim are not, the malachim are creation period, the chitzonius, and the olam is the chitzonius. Now, another way of defining chitzonius and pnimius is, chitzonius means a means from the end. Pnimius is, that's not a means, this is the objective. So the Neshamas Pnimius means this is what Eibishter desires. Malachim are a means for an end to augment the whole Avodah, and Oilamas is a means for a means. There should be a Tachten and Oilamas, and then the Tachten should be Avodah. It's all a stage, a setting for the Pnimius Dika desire, which is Neshamas. Continuing. You want to move through this quickly, so yeah. So let's move a little faster now. Everybody has a place. Yeah. And with a lot of many cause and effect chain tzimtzumim, the ishtalshel ha'oir b'biyah, in biyah itself, the oir continues to descend in this chain reaction, as it were. The chain reaction caused by the desire of the Eibishter to contract the oil. So it's descending, it's devolving, lower and lower. Madrege, but even madreges from one level to the other, and there's many levels. The oil becomes more hidden and concealed. Madrege, one level to the other, more and more so. Till the oil now is invested in the world of the spheres, which Rambam speaks about. These are physical, quasi-physical, spiritual forces that are responsible for nature. And the next level below that, Hamazolas, the constellations. These refers to the Malachim, the various Malachim and defined forces of nature. So on this level of Galgalim, as he describes in Rambam, right, we'll learn this. And Mazolas, Harimisave u'misgashe. The divine revelation becomes literally thick, and Mizgashem physical. It's not yet physical, but Mizgashem becoming Hakshama towards physicality. Talking about oil still, it's still a chayis, but it's a chayis to become coarse and materialistic and highly defined and very limited. So therefore, all the ashpa and revelation of the likus in this world, this is without avodah. This is just the way God creates. It's all through the agency of the galgalim and the mazolas, because that's where the oil is invested in the most finite and physical way. Like the pasuk says in Zayis Baracha, Meged Tvui Shomesh. Moishe Rabbeinu says, it blesses the Yidden. Meged means the sweetness, Tvuis of the crop. Shemesh comes from the sun. Meged Geresh Yirachim. And the sweetness of the Geresh is other kind of produce, comes from the moon. Another term for produce. Pasuk is saying the sun and the moon are responsible for the ashpa, the sweetness, the bounty, etc. Or kamaim, as it says in Medrash, Bereshis Rabbah, there's no blade of grass below. Mazel milamayla, that does not have a mazel, a source above. Hamakabe, that strikes it, and says, Gadel, grow. Again, these are these forces of the likus that have been nimshach in such a finite way, responsible for the nature of nature and for the existence of nature. But all comes from it all comes from the divine life force and energy, which it flows into creation and sustains and nourishes creation through the galgalim, the spheres and mazolis and the constellations. This is a great descent. Godliness has come down in such a concealed, extreme way. In the tremendous concealments and descents through the worlds of Biyah, all the way down to a very external, physical hashpah, our physical world. So not only does the oil come down to nourish and sustain a physical world, it gets even worse. Even a greater descent. But now the Moishe shifts now to Avodah now. Whoa. And especially when the oil comes down into such a great degree of concealment that it is giving rise to or sustaining something not just some nature, but something which opposes godliness. That the world is a state that can forget completely about the Eibishter, and he's creating it. He's creating this world that forgets him. How much more so? How much more so do we see this in outright clip in Sitra Achra, not just forgetfulness, but opposition. Lamer, that Pari says, the Nile is mine, and I have made it. Actually, it's elsewhere in the same Haftarah. In the Aniyas Sini, there's two titles. Well, I made myself. Later it says, Vaniyasisi, I made it. But the Sini could be understood that he was a god. Then he claimed himself to be a god. He created himself. He is one with the Nile, the source of life, and I created it. I made it. This is the opposite of the truth. Emes is emes. So the Avorach Yaakov is Pari. Yaakov blessed Pari. How did he was able to say this? Because if you go down to the Nile, the waters would rise towards him. But what's that as a result of? Yaakov's bracha. It says in Rashi brings it on the pasuk of Vayivarech Yaakov. But what did he bless him with? He blessed him that the Nilus should rise, the Nile should rise towards him, which begs the obvious question: what? Why would he do such things? He's encouraging Avodah Zarah. He's encouraging. This is how Pari is able to exploit that he is a god. You see, the water rises towards him, but he was in awe of it. But this was the kavanah. I mean, he had the choice then to make a great kiddush Hashem and say this all comes from Yaakov, or claim title to it, which he did. It's all part of the kavanah that there'd be this great choice, and that meanwhile Klippa gets the upper hand until it's transformed. So he says this is complete opposite of the truth. What he really got was Hashpas HaToiv, that the Nile rises towards him, and he should have acknowledged that this all comes from the Eibishter's bracha through Yaakov. He didn't do that. So Pari is the king of Mitzrayim, which means Gvulim, limitations and boundaries. He doesn't just ignore this. But Kofi Tova means the opposite of acknowledging a good. The word for it. No, in grateful, but more grateful means the opposite. He claims that the Nile is mine and I made it. Which is the opposite of truth. Now comes the Avodah friends, like I should come back in Yeshish and come back with this has application, the Avodah of each one of us. The Bali Aslok by Yeshua, both the ones involved in making a livelihood in business in Yeshua, those whose life is sitting in the tents of Torah. How so? The Bali Asokim, he's saying we could all be like Paro. Bali Asokim, businessman thinks the Keisha waits him, it's my power and the strength of my hand that has made me all this strength, all of this accomplishment. Now, Gamshi Deo he knows and believes Shuhu and see the Abish that gives you the koyach to do valiantly. And he knows that Birchas Havaya Hita'ashir is the bracha of the Abish that brings wealth. Or Maskishim Shemayim Al Kol Dovar V'Dovar Basakray, and he mentions Baruch Hashem, everything in his business, the words Baruch Hashem on his lips. Still, he still thinks, well, at the end of the day, and the Chachmosei Omdleis, his Chachma that stood for him in good stead. Notwithstanding his acknowledgement and his emunah, and he knows. So therefore, you see such a person when his fortune is shining, as it were. When he's in an elevated state, so then yois b'havosei. Yois means he becomes arrogant. Yois, strength, b'havosei in his being, becomes very. It's a word, no? Becomes. Yeah, we know what it means. He touches. He takes pride in his very being. We had a teacher as kids. He was a Telz Mamish. Ponyevich Mamish in Lithuania. He was a big Talmud Chacham, a wonderful man. Clean shaven. He was an embassy misnaged. I mean, the embassy is a real bitter opponent of Chassidus, but the embassy misnaged, the embassy mensch. You don't see them anymore because the misnagdish world has completely adopted all the chitzonius of the Chassidish world. You don't know what misnagdish used to look like. Today, the davening, you're kvetching, this was misnagdish davened, motionless. You don't see it because the whole thing has become it's a relic of the past, the old authentic misnagid. Kaponim, so he used to sing, we sat around the table. He said about to his son, let's say his name, you conceited cock, as a rooster, misgoy ba'atzmai, at the table. What he saw in him that made him say that, I can never know, but that's what he used to call it. The kid smiled, that's where he got it. Anyway, upon him, I'm saying you should be Lili Nishmas, my teacher, and Alex, both of them. And Yaakov Rabbi Olav Shalom and Alex, my friend, passed away. His son, the brother, comes here. In Yemen Rabbi, almost every year I try to raise money for him. It's a brother, younger brother of Alex, my friend, who I have to tell you was the humblest person I ever met, just by nature. Anyway. So Akaponim, so what's the business person? So when things go well, he's impossible. When because he thinks that it's his chachma that which he owes his success. And so what happens in the reverse? When things aren't going so well, he's under pressure. He's down-spirited, and he's in a lowly state. Both these positions are not true. Not his pride and not his brokenness. Since the Eibish's bracha that gives the wealth, he should be equal in terms of the way he feels. God wants to show. Ella the yesh by chsaron, but he has this chsaron. What's the chsaron? That he's a munah, is not the pnimius. That was the Baalei Sokim. Now the yesh v'oyel. The Kamekin the yesh v'oyel. He's saying it's like Paro. You know the emes. Paro knows that he got this bracha from Yaakov. So the person knows the emes, but it's Kofi Torah, claims title. So likewise, the yesh v'oyel, because of the please from that. Agam shalem b'Torah yidei she'Torah savaya. He learns Torah. He knows that it's the Torah of the Eibishter. Or calls it Efshich Chalila. It's possible shechalidish b'keich haTorah with the keich of Torah in the dvar halacha she'ebech haTorah. He could say something which is contrary to Torah. But b'dugmas Baalei Sokim, just like the Baalei Sik, the Maimin Bavaya, the Munah Pshuta, even though he believes truly in the Eibishter, sure he is Baruch Haneis and Keich Lasses Chayil. The Eibishter gives the Keich of Brichas Havayit Ashir. The calls and Kashin Yon the Matzlich, but he's Matzliach, Libis Sechuchol, he's smug, his heart is smug. He's go ba'atzim, and he takes pride. Kashin Chas Shom Dochak Loi, goes back to the Baalei Sik, when it's under pressure, as he make Li B'Yosef. It hurts him a lot. It pressures him. V'shof bein atzman, he's down. Tama dovluhu. The reason if you should etzem, you say the asik inik the boy. The foundation of his attitude towards his livelihood is not what it should be. That he professes faith. He knows as the Eibishter that gives him the ability to transcend that simple faith level. It's missing the Atit Tzava, right? It's missing the Pnimius. The foundation, which means the conscious foundation, Yisoid, not just the Emunah, but the conscious Yisoid is not the way it should be Al Pi Torah. That's why it's the highs and the lows, and they're both lies. And the same as the Yeshiv Oil. He wants the same thing. He knows. He learns. He's from the Yid, and he's learning God's Torah. But when he's Matzliach, it's his Svar, it's his Inyan. But his whole learning and the acquisition of knowledge is not the way it should be. And that is when he learns Torah, behind the base, limudai, while he's learning. He forgets of the giver of Torah. It's intellectual pursuit, and that's what he's lost in. Because the way it consciously is related to Torah is seichel. So afterwards, when he knows, he mastered the subject. He knows it's the Eibishter's Torah. But his relationship with it is on an intellectual level, and he understood it. And it's his knowledge, it's his svara, it's his insight. He could, God forbid, say something, or the dayik in besichlei, and he's a genius. He made a kash and the teretz. It's the opposite of Torah. I know, concluding the kol inyan that gamsh makabel chayis malikus mamish. So this is all to say, he's all describing the matter. The Insof is the matad Insof. So this revealed in the higher elements, that's Begoli. But the matter, it comes down to tremendous ishtalshalis, all the way down into a world that opposes and exploits. What I'm missing here, when you take a favor and you turn it against the benefactor, not just the word. So here, it's all because the oil comes, who's giving him chayas while he's learning this way? It's the Eibishter. So he's dragging the Eibishter, as it were, into a place of libit tzimtzumim and halamas v'asteidim, bringing at teva, and this is nature, its lowest level, lashon tugu b'yamsuf. Teva means sunken in the yamsuf. I'm going to say in the lashon of Yoshir. She'erhu mutzah behester hela b'yoseh. The divine light is sunken in great concealment. Sheba b'ribu yishtalshalos. So this comes as the result of the tremendous descent. It descends from level to level till the final level, which is he just described even opposing God. And that is the ice. So the Beis Hashem tomorrow will begin the Rebbe's beer, Tafshin Chav Gimel, on this ice. Okay.
Why is it consequence can be not recognized, not in Mishnah?
What? I'm sorry.
The consequence of not being on top, thinking properly leads to saying davar teika chater.
Yeah. So first of all, it's two things. Okay, just to elaborate. Number one, because he lacks bittul, he's not mechavan to the emes of Torah. So it's kedushim pashat shkorim. They're wrong. That's not pshat in the Rambam, not pshat in the Rashi. That's number one. Number two is elsewhere in Chassidus it brings that because of his gaiva, even when he knows he's wrong, he won't admit it. And he'll just keep on fighting to the end to defend his position. She's not open. The pasha he means, but first and foremost, being machadish and saying things in Torah, which is hepech emes. I'm not going to mention what this is, but listen, it was in the Jewish press. One of the greatest Rosh Yeshivas in the Lithuanian world passed away. I'll just say from that Yisrael, I'm not going to say it was. So they're writing his greatness. It's what they're writing. It's not a joke. And his final words before he died, they wanted to bring out his whole life as Torah. The final words were that Rashi made a mistake in this place. That was the hesped. Chman litzlan. The Chman litzlan that even facing Malach HaMavis is that's anyway. Ein lahayrych. But that's the point. Okay.
So would you say that arrogance is the lowest level?
Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Arrogance and pride, there's nothing lower. And it's a cause, it'll bring to everything else. If it hasn't already, eventually it will. All right, friends.